Good morning, y'all. This is David, the Georgia photographer. Today we're on the property and I'm going down to the chicken coop. I'm going to treat y'all into a little treat today. I'm going to turn the chickens loose. The dog has an invisible fence, so he can't get down here into the garden. And the chickens have kind of learned where he can go, so they stay out of where he is pretty much. Occasionally they'll wander into his area and he'll run them out. But let's just let the chickens loose. Let's open the door. Here they come. Let me back this off a little bit. Give you a little more light. All right, guys, y'all wanna come outside? Come on. Y'all coming out? Come on out. There you go. They have to come out. They can't stay in their coop. Come on, boy. There he is. Listen how happy they are. And if you like my channel and videos, I'd appreciate that subscription and a thumbs up. That just makes the channel go better. So with that out of the way, let's get into this. Today we're doing lesson number 3. Lesson number 3 is about light. This is probably the most important lesson in photography that you'll ever have. I am not the most qualified instructor, but over the period of the years that I have done photography, I have learned light is the magic. You have to see the light. If you read any book by a great photographer from days gone by, they're almost universally going to say, follow the light. You see it over and over and over again. A photo is usually sorted into 2 classifications. They'll either be snapshots or photographs. And I say that because typically snapshots are shot with very poor lighting. Like a lot of times you'll see the people will be ghost white and the background around them is almost black, or they're black silhouettes and the background is exposed because the camera is trying to figure out what they're doing. And a photograph is thought out. A lot of times you don't really, if you don't notice that the photograph is thought out, it's because the photographer did a good job and he's telling a visual story in such a way that you don't even realize that he's done it. This is why landscape photographers love to shoot at sunrise and sunset. It's when the best light is on the sky. It makes the sky beautiful, makes all the shadows look good, softens things, does all that magic stuff that landscape photogs like. Another place that you'll see this kind of activity is with street photographers. Street photographers love to find an interesting place with some interesting light breaking over it, creating an angular profile or something, and then they'll just kind of camp there a lot of times and wait for someone to pass through to give it some depth. Pay attention to what looks good and when the light falls on a subject. What looks good, what doesn't. Normally light that strikes a subject directly will be considered harsh or bright or hard light, to where light that's in a shaded area like this is considered soft light because it's reflected and it's scattered, so there's no shadows. Normally, light that approaches your subject above the center line and off to one side or the other of the camera is the most desirable when doing portraiture, but that's just kind of industry standard. You're not obligated to shoot that way. That's the beauty of photography. It's completely subjective. So there are rules to using light in photography, but remember that some of the greatest work ever done was done by people who broke those rules. But I do have a few guidelines for what has made pleasing images for me. You're free to use them if you want. You're not obligated to. That's the beauty. So let's look at some of these guidelines that I have learned that I like to follow for my photography. My personal rule number 1 is a north-facing window in the northern hemisphere almost always produces beautiful light that makes it perfect for portraiture. I have a little saying, never pass up good window light. So if I've got the family with me and we're walking through a building or something and we go by a window and it's north facing and it's got beautiful light spilling in, I'll stop and make a portrait, even if it's just with my iPhone, because it produces such beautiful light. If you shoot in midday sun, try to do it in the shade of a building or a large structure of some kind that casts a good even shadow over you. And it's basically the same as a north facing window. It takes a lot of flash to overpower the sun. So if you're trying to use fill flash in the sun, it can be done, but it takes a lot of it. But the sun makes an amazing rim light. And an overcast sky is the biggest softbox ever created. Unlike what I have today. I don't think there's not a single cloud in the sky. Can't really show you that one easily, but yeah, you can go back and watch a bunch of my street vlogs and you'll see that an overcast sky produces the softest light ever. Hard light will cast shadows on your subject, and a lot of times those shadows aren't good. It'll put shadows in the eyes. It'll make them like, it'll darken the eye sockets. It's a real big problem for portrait photographers because it doesn't look real attractive when you go to print. The softer the light, the better the portraiture, as a general rule of thumb. But now bear in mind, hard light brings out details. So if you're wanting your photos to look gritty or photojournalistic looking and you're going to do them in black and white, maybe you want that hard light, so it gives you all that detail and all that structure and all that, texture. And there's only one good way to get good at using light, and that's to get out and shoot photos so you can see what produces good results, what doesn't produce good results. You can't read it in a book and learn it. You just have to do it. So with that, get your camera out, go take a picture with it. So to recap, direct sun or direct artificial light is usually considered harsh and it's hard, and it produces like lots of details and shadows a lot of time, which are not desirable. Soft light is reflected. It's bouncing off of a surface or it's reflecting through the shade from the surrounding terrain around it. Today is the worst possible day to try and get soft light without some kind of help because there's not a cloud in the sky. So you got to find a spot that looks good as well as doesn't have a lot of color in it, so that the reflected light isn't doping it. Like if you've got a red brick wall, it's gonna make all your photos look red. The green grass typically will reflect green light up onto a white bridal outfit. And that's a problem for a photographer if he's shooting weddings. He has to be able to get that green out of that image off of the white. It's constant stuff like that you're working on. But the only way to get good at using light, dang it, something lit my eye. Never fails. It always happens. A gnat or some crap. Okay. To close, the only way you're going to get better is to get your camera out and go shoot photos with it. So with that, this is David, the Georgia photographer, and I really appreciate you sticking around with me to the end. So get your camera out, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.